Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on BIA Center for Excellence in Business English. And today we have a very special guest with us. Today we are not going to really talk about so much about business English or communication skills, but reading is a dying habit today. A lot of people enjoy reading. They want to read, but then they don't read enough, or they wish they could enjoy reading, and but then most of them start reading 2 pages and then they feel bored, they sleep, or they do something else. But here we have with us someone who reads a lot, so who sets targets for her reading. And in one particular year, she read one book every day, and she posted the list of books that she read at the end of the year, which inspired me to try to read at least one book every month the next year, which I did, but I chose mostly the smaller books so that I could easily complete reading it. And the person I'm talking about is not just an avid reader, she is also an advocate by profession. She completed her master's in law from the Christ University in Bangalore. And she has been practicing for the past few years now. And she has also she has recently completed her DTM, which stands for Distinguished Toastmaster. Toastmasters is an international platform that helps people to enhance public speaking and leadership skills by practice. And once you complete most of the things that one can do in Toastmasters, you get this title called the Distinguished Toastmaster. And she is now a Distinguished Toastmaster. We congratulate her on that. So she's a public speaker. She has won contests. She has mentored people. So all these are things that she had done as a part of Toastmasters. And yes, today our focus will be on her reading habits and how does she manage to read so much. So with that said, thank you so much for joining us, Shriraja. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. And it is good to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. One thing that I have to say, I'm not a DTM yet. I'm
Okay.
still yet to finish one more thing
All
to
right.
become a DTM. But I
Okay.
would love the title already.
Yeah. Okay. So we say celebrated in advance.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. So to start with, I'd like to ask you, what motivates you to read?
Let me tell you that from my younger days, my social circle with friends have been very limited. I was not one to keenly make friends quickly. Although I have been good socially to approach people, talk to them, I did not have a big friend circle either in school or on college, during college. And that is why reading became a habit to pass that social time for some personal learning time. That is one of the reasons that always pushed me towards reading. It became some sort of a companion that I started very early on. And I think I also inculcated it from my mother. I used to see her read. She reads a lot of Kannada books. And we both used to go to shop for books by with the excitement of reading together. And I think over the period of time, that became a very big part of my life. Yes, that moment of not having to make friends so easily pushed me to read every day, and now I just enjoy it.
Wonderful. But nowadays, most of the time when people can't make friends, they just go to Facebook or, I mean, nowadays Instagram, of course. So
Right.
yeah, when I used to be young, it was Facebook. So, but,
Yes,
um,
I still do that sometimes going to Instagram, but
mhm.
book is probably a preferable choice.
So how did you make books win over Instagram? Because usually Instagram easily wins with all the algorithms. Books don't have any of that. So how
I
does it
don't
happen?
know. I have just been the person to enjoy reading books. Social media has been the second choice. I actually caught on to it much later.
Hmm.
All social media channels, Facebook or Instagram or any other things. I caught on to it much later because everybody were already there, and then later I started opening accounts, then started following people and all. So it didn't really impact so much on my reading habits.
Lovely. Okay. As I said in the beginning, many people want to read. They read 2 pages, then they fall asleep, or they get bored, or they find something else more attractive. So what would you like to tell such people?
I would say that do not get overwhelmed by the number of people reading surrounding you. It is not something that everybody has to do it all the time to seem intellectual or to seem knowledgeable or to be the smartest person in the room. It doesn't work that way. You will have to develop some interest on your own. Now, there is no compulsion on the variety of books that is there to be offered for you on your plate. You can pick anything, your field of choice. If you do not want something general, it is too hard to pick, then pick something of your profession itself, and that will suffice. Reading doesn't necessarily have to be the classic author publishings that we look at in general. If you read something, I believe if you read an article also that might interest you or that might fill you up with some knowledge, that should suffice. If you read a column in the newspaper every day, that is enough. If you have learned something new from that 10 lines on in a newspaper, I think if it has stayed with you after that reading, I think the job is done and the mission is accomplished there. So for me, everybody who keeps coming and asking me saying that I can barely read one page, I can barely read 10 lines, I fall asleep, I feel bored, I cannot stay awake. Good, I suppose, in a way, because at least something is making you sleep more often, let's say, if you think about it. But jokes apart, I think if you find a reason that might interest you, any subject for that matter, it can be professional, personal. If you heard something, okay, some conversation you had with your colleague today, and then you thought, okay, maybe I should find out more. And then if you read on your electronic gadget also, I think that will suffice. Just that if you spare 10 minutes of your day to reading, it will make a difference in the conversations that you have thereafter. Yeah.
Okay. As you connected reading with learning, I'd like to ask you, can you tell me three important things that you learned because of reading or through reading?
One, I think, is patience. The patience that it requires for reading is enormous. You just said that you picked up on smaller sized books, right? The
Yes.
same goes through for the thicker books. You should generally not look at the size of the books, let's say, but assuming
True.
you pick a thick book, sized book, and then you want to read it, the patience with which you go through the book, let's say you do not like it, some 10 pages in, and you do not seem to like it, but you are not a quitter. You want to see it through because you have bragged about buying that book and finishing it. So I think it develops that quality of patience within you to slowly delve in to each of the pages, understand the characters if it's a fictitious book. Otherwise, if it's a non-fiction, delve into the history of things, the data of things. And then by the end of the book, you will realize that you were patient with it. You may or may not have liked it, but you saw it through, and that probably you will see outside in some work that you do indulge in. That patience quality, I think, will come in first. The two other things that associate with learning for me is personally, for me, I like to learn at least one new thing every day. It could be
Wonderful.
anything. Now, it can be about a person's character. If I'm interacting with you today, if I'm learning something about you today, this minute, that suffices for
I
me.
hope you learned
Learning for
something
you.
good about me.
I have known you for a long time and I've learned very good things about you.
Thank you.
But yes, similarly, the book does that learning aspect for me. If I read 5 pages and I know something about a character or a word, if I learn for the first time, that is enough. So that my goal of that one learning, key learning, it can be very simple, but if I learn something for that day, it will help me.
Do you track
So
these
that
learnings anywhere?
not really. It just
Okay.
stays in my mind. I do not write them down per se. But if I'm reflecting, I'm able to recollect where I got it from. So if I'm catching it from a book, then I'm able to remember. Yes, if I remember reading a word, found it interesting, looked up the meaning, then I will go back to just remembering that book. It stays in my mind saying, okay, this is something that I learned from the book today. But the third thing I cannot really think of, but I think these are the two important things for me to stay the patience virtue of it, as well as learning something every day. that angle, that goal, personal goal for myself.
And you mentioned about looking up a word in the dictionary when you found a new word. How frequently do you think people should do it when they read a book? Because sometimes we tend to do it more and we lose track of what we were actually reading. So, what are your thoughts on this?
It depends on the process. Now, I usually don't do it as often. What I do mark it, let's say, sometimes, or probably jot it down in a piece of paper if I find it really intriguing. Sometimes you are able to, if you read a word and you do not know the meaning, but this sentence gives you a fair idea of what the meaning is of the word, then I leave it at that because I know if I'm using such a sentence in the future, I may be able to use this word also. But if I really am intrigued about the meaning of the word, I've never come across it at all before. The spelling itself intrigues me. At such times, I jot it down, which is very rarely. Otherwise, I wait for my reading time to get over and then probably look it up. But for some others, if you find it really difficult to progress further without looking up the meaning, then I suggest you look it up then and there. If you think it breaks your focus, then okay, don't. But otherwise, it can also mean that reading and learning will help together. So you also end up learning about the meaning of the word as well as understanding the book better. So it depends on how you want to go about it.
Okay. Well, you read short stories, you read collections of short stories, you read novels, and you read complex books with complex vocabulary like Salman Rushdie's books also. Which one is your favorite?
Author wise, I do not have any favorites, let's say.
Mhm.
But anything that has a lot of depth in character is something that I enjoy. Fiction writing is something more of my preference as opposed to non-fiction books. I try my hand at it, but somehow I feel like I have enough of non-fiction work in my work already, professional environment. So I don't think that I can come back reading the same thing again. So I prefer fiction writing, and maybe the second preference would be autobiographies, biographies, and things like that. Now, when it comes to that, my whole I do not pick books based on authors always. I have a few authors in mind, maybe from the past, so I pick them. But if I really have to go, is based on how the story just presents itself to me. I just read the back cover of the book when I'm buying it, and if I like the theme set out, and I just go ahead and buy it. I do not think much about whether I'm going to like it, not like it. That is okay. I leave it to that. If I don't like it also, it is okay. At the end of the day, effort of going, writing that book matters than the result it produces. So it's fine. So my preference is based on the character development. That is what at the end of the day I end up looking for in a book.
Interesting. I have seen you post mostly about fiction, and I was wondering why not non-fiction as
Yes.
well. So you mentioned about reading for your profession. So can you tell me how much important is it to read? More than how much important, how much um, would it make the life easier for someone who wants to take up law if they read?
I'm telling you, it is very important, extremely important. I have learned it the hard way and I'm still learning, let's say. My seniors at work tell me that it is compulsory that you read something related to law at least for, let's say, 15-20 minutes, how much ever time you can gather every day before you go to bed. This is, I'm talking about work apart, not the daily dose of your clients, your regular cases, but just law in general, the pure law and the love for it that you have. If you want to get deep dive into it, then reading is becoming extremely important because a lot of my profession, and I'm talking specifically about litigation, as in I practice in a court of law. So, for that side of things, if you're not staying current and updated with the developments that are happening in the society, the changes in law, the policies, the political side of it, and all the other aspects, if you do not stay current, you can easily become outdated in the field. If you want to become better, challenging yourself every time in every case that you handle, reading becomes extremely important for a person who is looking towards picking law as their career and is also looking at reading as a habit.
And when you say when you talk about staying updated, uh, we can't stick only to books because updates kind of come in almost every
Right.
day. So where do you find the literature related to this? So are there any
So the
specific
profession.
websites? Yeah.
Yes, yes, there are specific websites, there are news channels that give us. Mostly, our profession deals with reading judgments passed by different courts,
Okay.
any regulations that are passed, and the description, the writing that's involved into passing some legislations, let's say.
Hmm.
So those are very readily available today. There are multiple legal search engines, multiple apps that offer this. And you know that trend that prevails today is the bite-sized information, right?
Yes.
Because the attention economy is very limited for everybody. So, to boost this purpose, all bite sized information is readily available with a lot of apps. So, it is instant. I have a few, I think I have three downloaded on my phone that I regularly keep checking. If I'm waiting for some matter in court, I have my phone with me and I look it up. If I instantly think of some proposition that I want to search, it is useful for the matter immediately. Let's say it's reaching in the next 5 minutes and I need to look something up. I can use it. So it is that easily available, and all of them are reasonably trusted also. So you can go. It is authentic information. Of course, you will always have to fact check it, go back to the relevant material, and all of that. But for the instant person who wants instant data, there is plethora of information that's available with you.
Wonderful. You're saying that most of these are available for a common man as well. You need not be
Yes,
necessarily from. Okay,
yes.
wonderful. Okay. So reading has helped you so much with your profession. And when it comes to the speeches that you deliver, the contests that you participate in, and your entire journey towards, still almost becoming a DTM. So, how has reading impacted this journey?
Reading has impacted in two ways. One, in speech writing per se, let's say the stories that I share, some of them, somewhere, some element will be something borrowed from a book. You may borrow it from your personal experiences that you encounter. It will also be at the same time from the books that you read, from the materials that you come across. So something always is borrowed, at least some elements of it, that only is personal to you, that only you are aware of. That is one thing that helps me in speech writing. It helps me to draw inspiration from the material that I come across. Secondly, like you said, the vocabulary aspect of it. Although in Toastmasters, let's say, you are taught and trained to use simple words to make the most powerful impact. But it is also helpful when you use some interesting words in place of regular words to convey the same meaning with better positive impact. So that art I have mastered by reading the books constantly. So I would have preferred, I would have read some, if instead of, that regular thing, if you're saying it is a very good dosa, instead of saying very good, if you just simply write great dosa, it just does the purpose, meets the purpose, and it enhances the beauty of the sentence. So just that small example, those interesting words that you borrow from the books, if you use it in speeches, I think it makes more impact and people will be in awe. Let's say if you do not convince them with your speech, at least you leave them in awe of the words that you use. And that I think, again, makes the goal. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for talking about this. And I'd also like to know when it comes to a movie and a book on the same topic, which one do you prefer and why?
Books. Well,
Okay.
books, hands down. Movie, because I do watch movies, but not as often as one does. So, um, it's and more I more would like to rely on the theater experience of things. So the chance of going to theaters itself is rare, firstly for me. But when I do enjoy it. And watching something digitally is I do not have the patience to see it through at one stretch. So I tend to break and then watch. So I do not like it. So I would rather indulge in a book because it will have more depth to the character. And movies are, you know that it's just made fit, custom fit for the commercial side of things, and that doesn't always convey a message that a book tends to do. So it's always books over movies.
Lovely. So one who doesn't read much, when he sees someone like you or anyone who is a lot into reading or who mentions many things from books, for example, they tend to
Yeah.
think, "Oh, I wish I have read so much." Right? So, what would you like to tell them? Is there something that you would like to tell them?
Then I say, you be you at the end.
Yeah.
Like,
I-
it's okay. So what if you don't read? Right? See, now there's a saying in Kannada. I'm not going to say it, but it gives the
you
meaning to
can.
say that you either read and gain the knowledge, or you travel and you gain the knowledge.
Hmm.
So let's say it is not the reading is not the only means for you to feel satisfied with yourself. If you look at someone reading, maybe that is their way of approaching something, an idea for them.
Absolutely.
Probably that is the means of communication through which information gets relayed into their heads. For you, conversations with people might work better. For somebody else, travel might be the working factor. So it depends on how you are generally as a person. Do not ever, like I said in the beginning, do not ever get overwhelmed by you being left out in the race of people reading. There is nothing academic or smart about a person who reads a lot as compared to one who doesn't, right? For me, if you say that I'm always reading, it's been that tag for me ever since I was in school, young, and all of that. People just think that I'm scholarly, that I read often, and all of that. Nothing really. If you ask me something, I probably most definitely do not know about it, right? I'm as ignorant as the person standing next to everybody else. That is why do not always get overwhelmed by somebody else who's reading. It's just their way of grasping information. For you, it will be just different. If you think you want to try your hand at reading, go ahead, do it by all means. There are plenty of material books for you to pick. But if you think that that is not your cup of tea, do not drink it. That is all, right?
Thank you so much for this very beautiful and honest and telling us the truth. Yeah, so it's absolutely true. It's not necessary that this should be the only way to be. But if that's your way, then fantastic. Enjoy it. Uh, well, you have been speaking about reading and many things for the past few minutes, and you also appear in the court and the way you are speaking. So, the few things that I would like to highlight for the benefit of those who are interested in communication, because those are the ones who watch our channel mostly. So, a few things I noticed are you don't use very complicated words and you don't speak too fast, and you take a second or maybe 2 or 3 seconds to gather your thoughts and then give your answers. And there is a very unrealistic expectation that these things shouldn't be the case. People should just start and woo the audience, and show themselves as witty and all of that. But you sound great when you do all these things, and that is your style of speaking, and it is great when it works for you in Toastmasters, when it works for you in other places, and also at work. And I think movies also set an unrealistic expectation about what happens in courts.
Yes, so it is nowhere close. Let me tell you that. Maybe the dramatic aspects of it to a certain extent can be visible in some instances, but everything else is just for the show. It doesn't happen that way at all.
So I really want people to know, as per you, what do you define as good communication, or who is a good communicator according to you?
Someone who is confident in what they want to say and they say it truthfully to the person with ease. Now, it doesn't matter in how many number of words you want to express your message to somebody. It doesn't matter in how many number of, uh, let's say, in what fanciful, beautiful, dressed up language you want to use. So long as you just speak from the heart and whatever is the message, it's conveyed aptly, right? I do not. I have seen many people who do not have the best of the linguistic skills, who do not have the best English speaking skills or language speaking skills in general. They probably stumble in grammar or otherwise, and they worry about it. It is okay so long as you're working on it while also parallelly uh, patting yourself on the back for ensuring that your message gets through in the same way that you intended to. That will suffice. If you needn't be proficient in everything, every single sentence that you utter, so long as it is easy in your head and the same thing is relayed easy to the other person's mind. That is it. That should be the idea and the goal of a good communicator. I think.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for summarizing that beautifully. I would also like to know that you have a wide range of vocabulary, and you it's though it's not like complicated words, you choose the suitable the words that are appropriate for the context, and you use them well. Uh, do you attribute your the vocabulary bank mainly to reading, or is there anything else that you do to enhance your vocabulary?
Yes, a significant portion of my vocabulary has come from reading for all these years. And it also had to do, to some extent, my schooling. My primary and middle school, and thereafter my high school, was where I really started focusing on conversations. Especially my primary and middle school, until my seventh grade, I was part of a school, and there it was a convent, let's say, and the English speaking emphasis was significant. So conversations and the principal there, the teachers there were all very excellent in speaking English. And they used to, although they used to speak in the regional language, used to always communicate better in English. So it was a two supplementary things, right? One with books as well as conversations with my faculty members back in school helped me over the time build the vocabulary that I have today. Over the time, yes, naturally, I think these are the only two ways that I really see books reading as well as conversations that can really help in building your vocabulary. For some, it may be movies. They watch some dialogue and then they note that interesting and they start. If you notice, if you watch too many movies, people pick up on that and they generally tend to start speaking like the characters. That is also a way to develop vocabulary. But for me, it is books and conversations, especially during my school days.
Wonderful. So yes, I often say reading must be followed by writing, and listening must be followed by speaking. But if your focus is only on speaking, then you can speak after you read as well. I think that's what you said as something that you practiced. It's Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. But one last question before we wrap up: how much do you read in Indian languages, like your mother tongue Kannada or Hindi or any language? How much do you read in Indian languages?
Let's say 20-25%. Uh, if it's to do with my work, I read plenty in regional languages,
Mhm,
in my mother tongue as well as Hindi, not so much. We do not use it as often
mhm,
in local courts and work wise. For Kannada, yes, it is very prevalent. So if it's work, I read a significant chunk of material for my cases with the regional language. But if it's just for myself, it is about 20-25%. Because one, I do not have a lot of collection in my mother tongue, right? The books in my local languages. My mother does. So she tends to read a lot in Kannada as opposed to reading some in English. So she borrows books from me if she has to read something in English. For me, it is very less actually, because one, I do not get enough time to read something in the regional language. It takes more time if you look at it. English has become much more simpler for all of us to read, to understand, to comprehend. But regional language, the dialects, the words and everything, it is much more advanced and more very raw if you look at it. You read something, you need a few seconds to understand the meaning. It is not your spoken language.
Hmm,
It is
hmm.
not like your spoken language. You speaking Kannada is different than you reading Kannada because both are different. As opposed to English, where spoken and written English are almost always the same. So my percentage is, let's say, 25%, not really. But sometimes I try my hand at it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I asked this because I too barely read in Tamil, which is my mother tongue.
Yes.
And there are a few Tamil books at home, and I even bought a few out of guilt to read, but then I didn't read. Again, it takes a little bit more time than reading English because I haven't read in a long time in Tamil
Correct.
for an extensive
Yes.
period of time. And but then there is this fear of losing touch with your mother tongue,
Yes.
because I think most of the working professionals today with over 20 years of experience might find it difficult to write in their mother tongue now,
Correct.
who have
I
only
do
been used to
this.
typing. So sometimes, at least maybe 5 minutes a day, I think people can dedicate for reading and writing their mother tongue too. So I was really happy and surprised to know that 25% of your reading is regional language, because
Yeah,
that's not common nowadays.
because the ones that I read in my regional language is all mythological stuff,
Hmm,
right? Mythological, like maybe the Ramayana, the Puranas. So those I actually prefer to read in Kannada because I somehow find that they relate better to me as opposed to all the other kinds of work which usually is in English.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sriraja, for taking your time to be with us today and for telling us a lot of things about reading, speaking, communication, and many more, and also breaking some myths, and also letting people know that they can be themselves. There is no need to
Yeah,
worry about it.
no
Uh,
burden whatsoever.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your wonderful answers and for your valuable time. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. And hopefully, yes, if you can read, if you want to, please do. If you don't, perfectly okay. Thank you
Wonderful.
and take care. Yeah.
Thank you. You too. Bye.